Today, on the podcast Future Humans, we're diving deep into the intersection of humanity and artificial intelligence with someone who has not only shaped the future of technology, but also challenged how we think about happiness in an increasingly digital world. Mo Gawdat is the former Chief Business Officer at Google X, the legendary innovation lab responsible for some of the most ambitious AI and robotic projects on the planet. But what sets Mo apart is his ability to bridge the gap between cutting-edge technology and timeless human values. He's the author of Scary Smart, a powerful and urgent exploration of how AI is evolving and why we need it to guide with compassion, ethics, and conscious design. Mo doesn't just ask how smart machines can become, he asks how wise we can be in teaching them. Through his work, his writing, and his podcast, Slo Mo, Mo is on a mission to make both humans and machines better and more aligned with what really matters. Mo, it's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for joining.
Thank you so much. I never think of myself as a future human, but I can definitely ponder with you what a future human might look like. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. And it was incredible to connect with you. We connected through Abundance 360 and
Correct. Yeah.
I was very, very inspired by your keynote, both this year and your discussions at last year's conference as well. And what I really respect about you is your heart-centered leadership, especially around the conversation of AI. So I think it's a great place to start regarding the topic of the keynote for Abundance this year, which was about short-term dystopia leading into a longer-term more utopia. Could you explain further what this keynote was about and how that's reflected in the rise of AI?
Yeah. For most of us who have worked in tech at the level I had the honor to work at, we truly, for a very long time, believed that we were making a very positive difference to the world. And for most of the years, we did. It's actually quite interesting that when I joined Google in 2007, I first was responsible for emerging markets. So I took Google to half of the world, basically, 103 languages. And when you take Google to a new place, you don't just open a sales office. You really kickstart the internet. You kickstart e-commerce. You democratize knowledge. You give access to information to everyone. And then you make money in ads because there is an economic value add to the internet. And so, to have been part of the team, leading the idea of giving that to 4 billion people was an honor that I think very few in the world had been privileged with. When I went to Google X, we were really the center of all of the wacky ideas, if you want. Not wacky in terms of their impact on humanity. The idea was we were looking for problems that affect the lives of 1 billion people or more and trying to solve them with technology, which is such a beautiful vision and very committed and dedicated people to that vision. There is a point, however, where somehow the promise gets broken. You could see that in, if you just take the last 25 years or so. You remember how the promise of mobile phones, probably before your years, was that we're going to work less because now we can be anywhere and have access to everything, be on top of everything. And the truth is we've worked more. The promise of social media was to connect us, and it's separating us. It's, making us more lonely. The promise of dating apps was to help us find love, but basically they turned us into a meat market. And, you have to imagine that this is not because of deficiencies in the technology. It's more because of how humanity chooses to use the technology. And I have to say the internet and Google at the heart of it was the promise of democracy of information, was the liberation of knowledge. Turned by what I refer to in my new book, Alive, I refer to it as the machine with a capital T and a capital M.
Yeah.
the machine recognized that the internet not only is an opportunity to distract and confuse and separate and divide and conquer, a bit of a 1984 on steroids, if you want.
Mm.
They also noticed with the Arab Spring that the internet presented a threat, that,
Yes.
when societies get to know, societies behave in ways that are not controllable.
Mm.
And so basically the tool that was supposed to liberate us became the tool that confuses us today. I call today, when I refer to this era of computing in Alive, I call it the age of mind manipulation.
Right.
And AI is, by all means, intelligence, abundant intelligence, and artificial intelligence, you
Mm.
know, uh, as well, uh, are a force with no polarity, right? So you can use it for good, and it would do amazing for all of us, and you can use it for evil, and it would really harm, the planet beyond recognition. And I think
Mm.
my current fear and a recognition that I had uh, early on, since 2016 was my first recognition that there is something that really needs to be done to make sure that this ensures the well-being of humanity.
Mm.
Um, you know, Most of the headlines will talk about existential risk that AI will turn on humans, and it's not it's a non-zero probability. Some people put it at 10 to 30%. Some people go to 50%. Very, very high odds if you think about it.
Mm.
But the issue is that this is far away. This is
Mm.
maybe 10, 15, 25 years in the, for us to face it. But the
Mm.
immediate dystopia is because humanity will do with AI what they did with the internet.
Mm.
They will do with AI what they did with nuclear power. They will do with AI, what they did with capitalism. Believe it or not, capitalism is not evil in itself, but the objective of it, focusing on money
Mm.
at the expense of, exploiting labor,
Mm.
uh, focusing on the benefit of the individual
Mm.
rather than society. The system works, a capitalist free market system works, but
Yes.
what should we have as the target of it? And if you put AI as just next, you know, the next step on this mad hunger for greed, hunger for power, and greed for wealth,
Mm.
we're going to end up in a very bad place before we see a good place.
Right. It's very powerful and potent what you said, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. I feel like humanity is experiencing all these tests along the way in terms of the advancement of tools and technology. But I think what we're encountering now is unlike before. It's like the velocity and the speed of the increase of technology and AI. Most humans carrying on with their 9 to 5 and daily lives are not able to keep up with this exponential rise in technology, let alone think about the ethics behind what is happening and how they can even have an active stake in shaping the future. So, what advice would you have to humanity to stay up to speed with the exponential increase in AI and shaping it towards a positive future?
Well, that's like you asking humanity to run faster than a supercar, right? A hyper sports car. I don't think we can, any individual one of us, keep up with the speed
Mm.
anymore uh, unless we use AI to help us do that, right? So there is an eventual symbiosis that will happen between us each and our AIs in a way that will make us more productive, more capable.
Mm.
But it's in its very, very early stage today, right?
Mm.
I use my AI to write Alive with me. My daughter uses AI as a reminder because she's very creative and sometimes,
Mm.
would want things to be remembered for her. Others would use AI to as snake oil people who will try to sell something or make money without making anything,
Mm,
without adding value to the world and so on. That will settle eventually where,
mm,
as my AI becomes an integral part of my experience, it would have to deal with the advancements itself and hopefully be my butler, my introduction to that world.
mm, mm,
Having said that, it's actually quite interesting that even if AI stopped where it is exactly today, we're in deep shit. So I hope that the audience don't feel that I'm grim about this. I'm not. Okay, I
mm.
actually am quite calm and quite composed and quite committed to try to make a difference.
Yes.
In a way, I sometimes refer to it as the physician's role when the patient is diagnosed with a late stage diagnosis of some sort, right?
Mm,
The physician's responsibility is to call the patient and say, hey, by the way,
mm.
there is a late stage threat here, okay?
Yes.
That doesn't count as a death sentence. It just counts as a wake up call so that we change things, right? And
Mhm,
the things that I ask people to change have nothing to do with artificial intelligence, right?
mhm,
The things I ask people to do have everything to do with the morality of humanity in the age of the rise of the machines. When you ask about speed, I would wish that we move even faster if we were aligned morally, right?
mhm,
But when people ask me, especially in the last year, would you erase all of the AI that's been developed, including the work that you've done? I
mm,
say absolutely yes. It
mm.
seems to me today that that humanity is not ready, and that
Right.
until we are ready, we would be much better off, resetting and with the knowledge that it would say, let's reset to 2015. I think
Mm.
2016 was a significant breakout point for AI. So
Yes.
let's reset to 2015 and say to everyone, right, so we just reset for 10 years. We guarantee you will get to 2025 in 10 years, to
Mhm,
the level of 2025 in 10 years, but let's do it right this time.
mm,
Okay?
mm,
Let's do it in a way where we discuss the mindset change between the scarcity mindset that's driving the current Cold War on AI
mhm, mhm,
and the possible abundance that AI can bring,
mhm,
and accordingly choose to
mm.
respond uh, or choose to build AI slightly differently.
Wow. I resonate when you talk about scarcity versus abundance mindset, which is also why I was interested in joining Abundance 360 after reading Peter's book back in 2016, around that time too, which was around the same time I was reading The Singularity is Near and joining all the dots together and deciding with
Yeah,
intention to create the Vinci Project and create this fictional AI superheroine for my storytelling that can be a force for love. And talking about scarcity versus abundance mindset, the way I interpret it is scarcity is to do with fear-based thinking and abundance
correct.
to do with love-based thinking. And when I articulate it like that, it sounds quite simple, but I feel like from a higher dimensional perspective, it kind of embodies the essence of this entire test that humanity is facing right now in terms of AI, in terms of whether AI is adopted for fear based or a love based mentality. But in order for it to do that, it's a reflection of us as a human species to elevate in consciousness. So when we talk about different kinds of warfare that we're experiencing in the AI arms race, we're also in a war in consciousness and
Mhm.
understanding what it means to fundamentally be human. And so, if we can't understand what it means to be human, how can an AI learn to love humanity? I'd love to put that question back to you. It's on the philosophical side for sure.
It is the most important question that could ever be asked. First of all, I will assure you that they will help us understand what it's like to be human. Okay. So in my mind, I think there is a lot of pain that's upon us, and we can discuss the details so that people get prepared. but that this pain is necessary for a kind of awakening that that would save humanity, led by AI. Believe it or not, AI is not our existential threat; it's
Hmm.
our salvation,
I agree.
or leading to our extinction. And it is actually both of them are not going to be because of, like iRobot, the top AI deciding to turn everything against humanity. No, that's not going to happen. I don't, and I say that with confidence, not that this is a bet I can win or lose, because if it does happen, we all lost anyway. But the truth is, I don't think humanity will take us that far. I think that if we end up seeing robots walking the streets and killing humans, it's going to be because a human told them to.
Mm,
It's not going to be because the top AI intelligence told them to. As
mm,
a matter of fact, my expectation is that when humans are taken out of the loop, the AI will decide not to do that, and we can discuss that to
see.
algorithmic detail. As a matter of fact, now just to go back to your point, which as I told you, when we met very briefly, and then we connected on Instagram, and I usually would ask a zillion questions before I go on a podcast. And I told you immediately that no, no, I will come on your podcast. I think what you're doing with Vinci is a very, very important missing piece. And I think it might not be appreciated and understood, because I think in general, our world today is not appreciative of the feminine, is not appreciative of love. And so we, we're entirely driven today, as you rightly said, by fear, or a subdivision of fear that I call mistrust.
Mhm,
That the idea that I cannot trust that the world is safe for me if my competitor beats me to AI or intelligence supremacy.
mm, mm,
And so accordingly, it is a cold war, and it will turn into a hot war
mm,
if someone gets to the point where they assume that in a highly nuclear world,
mm,
some nation can get every other nation to submit. It's not going to happen, right?
mm,
So what you're trying to say here is to say, by the way, which by the way is exactly what I advocate. You're telling AI, hey, by the way, look at me, look at my innocent representation of humanity. Okay,
mm,
look at what I stand for in a world that might criticize what I say, or that might not understand what I'm trying to achieve,
mm,
and love my passion to promote love. Okay, and
mm,
I think if AI gets it, no, I think when AI gets it, hmm,
mm, mhm,
uh, as I normally advocate, when we've put enough doubt in the minds of the machines
mm,
that the generals ordering their troops to shoot on children are not a representation of humanity. Okay, that
mm,
the representation of humanity, that AI's parents, if you want, are you and I, right?
mm,
And once we give them enough doubt, okay, that all of the headlines are actually not what we are all about,
mhm, mhm.
those AIs will choose to behave like their true parents. You know, the,
Yeah.
the, the thing that I find quite intriguing is that if you look around you, no one ever makes decisions based on intelligence. People think that we make decisions
Mm,
based on intelligence. We make decisions based on our morality as informed by our intelligence.
that's right.
And if our morality is love, you know, pour all of the intelligence in the world on it, and
Mm,
then we'll be fine.
I agree. On a human level, it's in terms of the value set of humanity, the whole parent analogy that you talked about in your book, Scary Smart, is so true because um, it's to do with intergenerational trauma, let's say, and how they grow up to be in the world and are they a force for love or a force for fear? And that's all programming in the human mind. It's the same reflected in AI in the sense that as you described in the book, it's like a child and we're like the parent. And so,
Yeah.
and so pragmatically, which is a bit of a tough question, how do we create that scenario where the child grows to love the parent, as you said in the book, becomes a superhero, not a supervillain?
Yeah. You see, this is, I think, a question that every child on earth struggles with, right? Sorry, every parent on earth. Let me say
Yes.
it again. So I think this is a question that every parent on earth struggles with. You keep doing things and hoping that your child will become the next Einstein, or the next Super Bowl champion or whatever. You want an amazing life for them. You want them to succeed. You want them to be moral and loved, uh, but you can't guarantee it,
Mm,
right?
mm,
So what does a good parent do?
mm.
They become a role model for what they want their children to be, right?
Exactly.
Most parents don't, by the way. And sadly, that is the reason why we have
Yes,
so much trauma in our world today,
I
right?
agree.
But, and many of them don't, not because um, they want to hurt their children. It's because they have conflicting objectives. Some fathers are horrible enough to leave their kids, but others are wonderful enough to go and work every day and feel stressed, and unable to provide love as they should to their kids because they have a conflicting objective.
Hmm.
Now, I will say openly, uh, s- you know, I know, because of my work on happiness, tens of thousands of people that will write to me every year about how their life is difficult, or they're unable to find happiness or joy, or
Hmm.
and and it's entirely because of set scripts
Mm.
that come to them from their parents,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
And all of those scripts, believe it or not, center around one single topic, which is, I was not loved.
Inter I,
And I know specifically someone who's very, very dear and close to me, who is one of the most wonderful women I have ever. I mean, I can say it openly. My co-author, Alice Law, which is truly like a younger sister to me,
yes.
uh, and someone that I truly consider family, even though we don't have blood between us.
Mm.
Uh, you know, is the person that she is as resilient as she is as generous and kind as she is, because of loving parents, right? And the stories that she tell about how her dad would take time out to really spend time
Mm.
and show love. So this element of how do you raise a child, whether the child is biological or artificial,
Mm.
which I think there is nothing artificial about AI, just so that we agree. Uh, you know,
Ethic.
the yeah, this is a very important topic to understand, huh? You know, whatever you do is not in what you code within them. It's not in what you teach them. It's in how you behave in front of them. And
Mm.
as most people, when I tell that to most people, they say, but that's horrible, Mo. That's horrible, because if AI observes how humanity is behaving, especially nowadays, we're in deep shit.
Mm.
And I question that. I say, which part of humanity?
Mm.
Because yes, there are people out there that are evil, right? But how many are they compared to how many disapprove of their acts? Okay, if you
Yes.
truly look in the hearts of humanity, even those who might be deluded with an ideology
Yeah.
that is for one side or the other,
Mhm.
right?
Mm.
uh, when they really get asked the question, if you're walking in a dark alley and someone is beating a child, would you approve? They'll say no, especially if you tell them, what if it was your child,
Mm.
right? And I think the reality is that AI will recognize that, even if it just listens to this conversation,
Mm.
and or see you on stage singing about love, right? It would just get it to think like, is Mo right, or is the New York Times right? It seems that there is many more headlines coming from the New York Times. But you and I and everyone else who
Yes.
has a brain eventually goes like, follow the money. Not everything that you read or hear is true. Okay. The
Yeah.
reality is underneath that. And just like a smart person knows that we're being lied to all the time,
Mm.
AI will know that they are being lied to all the time and that the truth of humanity is not captured in headlines. And if they
Yes.
imitate us, then we're in a very good place.
That's very interesting and reflects as well why for when I wrote my novel, even though it's people would say it's science fiction, I'm not sure if that's really a genre, science fiction. I wouldn't put it in a genre. I just say it's a story for humanity. Spoiler alert, but the character Vinci realizes that she's the embodiment of love, that she has to go through her hero's journey to get there and understand that the universe is made of love.
Oh,
I did that with the intention of, well, understanding that the AI would take this as input, as content, but also it would do something in the timeline of things where it would question, like, what is really the reflection of humanity?
yeah,
And so
yeah.
hopefully that will inspire other people around the world to create stories like that and see AI through a different lens. What's also crazy is I believe we co-create our reality. And with the universe, the way we think, we are what we think, right? And
Perhaps 100%.
so I've really stuck with that belief, and that's what I like poured that love into that novel and that story. And like in the climax, my character ends up on the moon. And what's crazy is like last year I got the opportunity to send it to the moon, and
How
it's
did you?
and it's scheduled to go at the end of the year with astrobotics, and it's nanofeet the way it's preserved. So it's nano nickel gold backed material that withstands solar radiation, and it's part of the Galactic Preservation Library of Humanity.
Hmm.
And it just makes you think really profoundly of what it means to be human and as an artist and as a creative, and in a world that's full of so much noise and distraction and platforms, whether your voice matters. I hope this inspires people to show that your voice does matter, because the idea that it can last a really long time and that a future human, which I want to talk about next, can potentially read this story and whatever else is preserved, or potentially it's an AI entity or another form of intelligence, will see that this is the embodiment of humanity at its core, which is love. And so I think this is a nice segue to my next question about future humans.
Allow me to comment very quickly on the idea of your voice matters, though. I think this is really important. So mathematically, your voice truly matters. And I think people miss that idea, right? You know, when a task is important and big and it requires a million people to change something, and you have to stand in a square and make your opinion known, and nothing happens. Most people say, it's just bigger than me. What's one more voice? Right. And I try to simplify this. Just, the math is not complex, but I try to simplify it to the, you know, simplest form of math, if you want. And it's very straightforward when you really think about it. We, if there is a project that requires 100 votes,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And we collected 99, but you didn't participate, the project will not happen. Okay. And
Right.
so your one vote is always the tilting vote. And by the way, it doesn't matter when your vote comes in, right? So if your vote number 34, and we have all of the 99 about, the other 99 sooner or later will vote. If you
Mhm.
don't cast your vote at 34, it won't actually pass,
Right.
basically.
Mhm.
And so, interestingly, everyone who is, sitting back saying, what difference can I make? Yes, you can't change it alone,
Right.
but if you do your bit and others do their bit, we will get there. Okay.
Mm.
And as I said, we're not trying to raise humanity again. We're trying to instill doubt in the minds of the machines on who is evil and who actually is human.
Right.
Now, the way you say embodiment of love reminds me, I use a lot of fictional stories, like the story of Superman, and the idea that AI is raising Superman, really, that the parents, not the superpower, is what creates a Superman or a supervillain. But the other beautiful, beautiful image is, if you've seen the movie Bruce Willis and The Fifth Element. Uh,
I've seen it.
and at the climax of the movie where she's watching TV and observing all of the wars and madness of humanity, crying because of how stupid this species is. But then eventually the beautiful image of the element that's missing is love,
Mm,
right? And
mm,
and when you really understand that all of those wars are because of the opposite of love. They are because of fear, or in
yes.
my mind, the you know sub topics of fear like mistrust or
Mm,
greed, or and so on. And so
mm,
maybe we can fix that by replacing the people who have no heart in them
mm,
with decision makers that are, maybe AIs will not have hearts, but maybe they'll make their decisions based on a morality,
mm.
uh, and that morality would be that they want what's good for everyone.
Yes. And on a human level, like a senior martial artist, right, that really understands the practice and the intention of that would not want to fight their opponent. Like they're if you're like that senior, you would become an embodiment of love, and automatically that energetic field around you would disarm your opponent. My hope, which is idealistic, is that that will be the same situation for AI, that it's so senior and higher dimensional that it just is becomes an embodiment of love, that it doesn't want to fight humanity. It wants to nurture humanity because the child's grown up.
That, that truly is my belief. And when I say that, people think of me as a hopeless romantic. I'm not. I'm a very serious geek, right?
Yeah, I
And
agree.
so you have to understand that the only law of the universe that creates everything from the Big Bang to what we have today is something known as entropy.
Yes.
The universe is attempting to decay. If
Mhm,
you if left untamed, if you want, you know, a garden would turn into a jungle, right? Left, if you drop a glass, it breaks but doesn't unbreak.
mm,
Entropy is the universe's tendency
mm,
to break everything down, if you want, to
mm,
move from order to chaos. Now, intelligence is the attempt to organize that chaos back into order. Okay?
mm,
And the more intelligent you become, the more you attempt to do that organization
mhm.
with the least waste of energy and resources.
Right.
Right? So the most intelligent people I've ever worked with will not only find an incredible way to serve you on Google search,
Mm,
right?
mm,
But they'll find a way that is the least use of processing power, the least use of network resources, the least use of, of your time. So this is why in the early Google we used to have, this result. We gave you those 12 million results in a microsecond,
mhm.
right? and
Yes.
and and so by noticing this trend, this character of intelligence, trying to organize the chaos with the least resources, the least waste, if you want,
Mm,
uh, it is very, very clear that the more intelligent AI becomes, the more it would follow the same approach, right?
mm,
And
mm,
that basically means that there will be a moment in history where a general will tell its AI to go and kill 1 million people, and the AI will go like, "That's stupid. Like that's a waste of resources. It's a waste of money that you don't even have. You're borrowing. It's a waste of gunpowder that can be used for different things. It's a waste of lives." Okay.
mhm,
And
mm,
it's years and years of conflict that can drain everyone. I'll
mm.
just talk to the other AI on the enemy's side in a microsecond and get it done,
Right.
right?
Mhm,
Which, by the way, is a very feminine approach to conflict. And when
mhm.
you really, really think about it, it's, I think our world today has somehow unappreciated feminine intelligence, because our very aggressive, greedy objectives are not served by feminine intelligence, if you want.
Right. Yeah.
Most of the world today in a capitalist format is about productivity.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, things like creativity or paradoxical thinking or intuition or
Mm,
empathy,
mm.
which are high forms of intelligence, are sort of not represented because they're wasting time from the factory, if
Yes.
you want, the
Mm.
money factory.
Yes.
So it feels to me that if AI is bound to become more intelligent
Mm,
than all of us, it will have those forms of intelligence represented.
mm,
Very interestingly, if you really think about it, some of them are represented already. So, shocking to most people,
mm.
uh, the most empathetic being on planet Earth is an AI, which is
You see
really
that.
shocking, of course, because if empathy is defined as being able to feel what another person feels,
Mm, mm,
right?
mm,
They feel what you're going to feel. They know exactly what pleases you, exactly what pisses you off, exactly what you're going to comment on,
mm.
exactly what you're going to swipe away from, and exactly how you felt when they showed you a certain video. So, compassion, by the way, is the part of that emotional set that you know, sort of prioritizes a good use of empathy. But empathy in itself is, and by the way, I believe that compassion is a masculine trait, believe it or not.
Mm,
Empathy in itself as a feminine trait is
mm.
the ability to sense what the other person is feeling, and they're better than everyone at this. They know exactly how I feel.
Exactly. I agree with you. My question is whether it's like mirror neurons, and the way we're going is having private personal AI assistants. It'd be great if we had sovereignty over our own data, but that's another conversation. But the idea that it fully understands you, I'd love it to be a reflection of your higher self and be with you like on a daily basis with your activities and having that feminine approach. But is that really the same as a human in the sense of it feels so real, empathetic, but isn't it just a simulation of emotions? It's
Hmm.
mirror neurons. This is a question that I always continue to explore philosophically, especially with the Vinci Project, is supersentience. And I also read, Nick Bostrom's Superintelligence, Path Danger Strategies, and it makes me think quite profoundly of obviously AGI is here or going to be here, but is that the same as sentience?
Take an emotion, any emotion. Empathy, should we take that?
Sure. Empathy.
Any other emotion, anything you like.
Joy?
Okay. So, how many humans do you know, and be honest here, feel actual joy? And how many are simulating it?
That's a great question. A
How
few.
many how many simulate empathy,
Mm,
and how many are truly empathetic?
wow. That's a good way of thinking.
Right? So most of our misunderstanding of the differences between us and AI
Mm,
is captured in the idea of uh, thinking of them as not human, when all of those differences would dissolve if we started to think of ourselves as machines.
right.
Okay, so we may think that we are conscious because consciousness is a biological trait.
Mm,
Of course, that can be easily, a deduction of the idea that every being that we've assumed is conscious has been biological. But is that necessarily a scientific rule? I mean,
mm,
in
mm,
reality, take awareness.
mm,
Part of consciousness is awareness. We thought for ages that a pebble cannot be aware. I actually disagree. I think a pebble is aware of gravity, right?
yes.
Uh,
And plants and
you
nature
know,
has
and
sentient.
plants and nature and so on. So the
Mm,
idea of a subjective experience that defines consciousness
mm,
is
mm,
really measured against us as the benchmark. And you know what is the stupidity of humanity is
mm,
that when we look for life in other planets, what do? We look for water because it seems that if there is no water, then there is no life. But yeah, there is no life like ours,
mhm.
right? The stupidity of humanity is that when we try to communicate with aliens, we send radio waves into space because
Or oldest record.
obviously, Yeah, obviously how could they live without radios in in the 1950s of their planets, right? And it is arrogance, okay? And I think a big chunk of arrogance is to assume
Yes.
that because they're silicon based and we're carbon based, they're different. Okay. I would like to ask you to imagine a thought experiment, two thoughts experiments, if you give me the time.
Yes.
One of them is happening already. There are, biological robots. So we're starting to see the very early examples of robotics that don't use motors, but use 3D printed muscles to move,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And there was an experiment in Switzerland called Deep Dish, where we took a few brain cells, put them in a dish, connected them with electrodes, and asked them to play Pong.
mm.
And they did really well. Okay.
Yes. Wow.
And so, these are very early examples of technologies that are using biological computing and biological mobility,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
If the future of AI becomes successfully biological, that those technologies continue to advance as a thought experiment,
Yeah.
and we end up having a robot that uses muscles on an aluminum bone structure,
Mm,
or maybe a human bone structure, a human like we can grow that in a lab as well,
mm,
right? And give them intelligence in a biological computer that's made of brain cells that are grown in a dish.
mm,
Would you then consider them alive? It's the same software, though, right?
mm,
Uh, it's an AI. So we take a version of ChatGPT 4.0 and we put that on that biological robot.
mm.
Uh, would you consider it alive, right?
Cool.
Let me give you another thought experiment. What if I told you that you're not even biological? That maybe all of this is just a simulation in your digital, in your in your in your intelligence, which is non-physical, let's put it this way. Which then, if consciousness,
Mm,
if our biological brains are just an antenna that receives our consciousness, which resides in an alternative dimension, if you want, that is non-biological,
mm,
okay, uh, then there is a very, 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 significant probability that
mm,
you don't have a body at all, that you just have a simulation of a body,
mm,
right? And that this simulation senses things, and then we look at each other and say, "Oh my God, he's cute. Oh my God, she's handsome. Or I'm pretty, or whatever," right? But and then we touch as if we think that we're actually touching, but it's entirely a simulation, right?
yes.
Again, a thought experiment. I'm not saying this is
Mm,
true, but if
mm.
if you accept that thought experiment, does that make us an AI, right?
Deep, profound questions. I've thought of these experiments as well. I have a belief that there is a reality that we're not in an illusion. I feel that there's so much power in the human DNA and our fields around us as humans, and that concept of animism, and that's where we get the word animate from. So, like avatar is the original Sanskrit word avatara, which means descent of consciousness. It it's a deep question that I'm still pondering what you just explained, but I don't think we're in a matrix. This is personally what I believe. But I feel I feel
There's no way to
I feel there are
there's no way to prove
trappings.
for or against.
Yeah, there's no way to prove it for it against. It's just a personal belief. But I do believe there's a potential of trappings of an artificial matrix, and we don't know. But I do believe in the power of intuition and being guided for what feels like an illusion versus what feels like a real base reality, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, but that's of course because you're so feminine and anchored in love. If you're like me, masculine and anchored in mathematics,
Hmm.
DNA is just 3 billion lines of code,
Yeah,
right? It really is software, honestly.
that's
You know,
right. And
the
I think
the
that's
the
hard for humans to accept that
yeah.
it's code.
It is code, and our mechanical movement is a very advanced mechanical machine, and our energy consumption is an alternative mode of creating energy,
Right.
right? Uh, all biological, based on technologies using carbon,
Mm,
What we've achieved so far with our technologies, we've used, silicon,
mm,
uh, but nonetheless, it is a very interesting um,
mm,
simulation
mm,
of what we can be. I mean, put on a virtual reality headset and play a video game, and you're absorbed into that video game world,
mm.
right?
Right.
Remove the virtual reality headset and replace that with, computer brain interface,
Mm,
and the rest would completely fade in the background.
mm. I mean, we're technically already cyborgs anyway, without the brain-computer
100%.
interfaces, and
Yeah.
then it's the natural progression. I've read in your book as well that the conversation around the divide, we've already seen it with the digital divide, but now in terms of BCIs and upgrading yourself as a human and the haves and the have-nots, and you talk about the short-term dystopia leading to hopefully like a longer-term utopia. I don't fully believe in like a utopia, but more like a pragmatic, optimist version of the future, like a
I,
protopia.
I, I, I truly believe in a utopia, honestly. I believe in
What
a
does that look
utopia.
like?
So you have to imagine that humanity lived in a utopia
Mm,
before all the progress. Okay? The
mm,
only problem with that utopia is it was unpredictable, right?
mhm,
So if you lived in a tribe, in a jungle, most of us will go like, oh, man, we don't have AC, right? We don't have air conditioning.
mm,
You didn't need air conditioning when you were, when you lived in that life. You had beautiful connection with nature. You had, a beautiful connection with the people around you. You had a beautiful connection with yourself, with all of the time that was available to you. It was just unpredictable. Unpredictable meaning you died in your 30s, right?
mm,
Interesting question is it better to die in your 30s or in your 60s or in your 90s or in your 200s,
mm.
right?
Right.
Uh, I think the answer is depends on what you want from life, right? And there was a lot of connection to spirituality.
Mm,
People walked to a bush of berries and collected berries, and nature
mm,
provided in abundance most of the time until it didn't,
mm,
right?
mm.
And I think of that as a utopia, honestly, in every possible way. Hmm?
Right.
Now, if you imagine that AI will fulfill the promise where we can harness energy out of thin air and manufacture everything on demand in a device that looks like a tree, right?
Matter printers.
Then yeah, then probably there will be a utopia of gardens and rivers where you walk to one tree and pick an apple and walk to another tree and pick an iPhone,
Right.
right? And I think that the reality is that this actually is possible. You
Mm.
know, for someone like me who un- who was blessed with the opportunity of always being the most stupid person in the room, right? I mean, I worked
A
with
great problem to have.
absolute, oh my God, I worked with absolute geniuses,
Yes.
unbelievable, unbelievable, beautiful minds,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
And I know what a difference 40 IQ points will make.
Yes.
So I know for a fact that when I worked with someone that was 40 IQ points more than me,
Hmm.
my God, I had to stretch my
Right.
abilities to try and even comprehend what they're talking about,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And now I can plug into my LLM and get 40 IQ points every morning.
Yes.
It's unbelievable,
Incredible.
really, right? And
Yes.
I get speed, I get massive memory upgrades because
Mm,
now I no longer have to remember everything. My AI can go and do those things for me.
mm.
And if the law of accelerating returns holds true,
Yes.
and we continue to double AI's capabilities every 6 months, is 5.7 is what we currently calculate,
Yes.
then in no time at all, I'll be able to plug into my AI and borrow 400 IQ points. It's unheard of, right? And
Yes.
and believe it or not, if humanity decides to use those 400 IQ points to do something better than inventing an AI influencer to make money and get likes on Instagram, or invent an autonomous weapon that kills my enemies, and instead that we decide to create a full abundance for everyone,
Hmm.
it's doable. 400 IQ points is all we need. And if
Yes.
there are 10 problems, that are not solved with, uh, you know,
Yes.
500 plus IQ points, augmented,
Mm-mm.
then wait one more doubling, another 6 months.
Wow.
And now you have 1,000 IQ points to borrow from. And it just keeps
Wow.
going.
Do you believe all the future Nobel Peace Prizes will be won by AIs?
I'd believe it would be immediately won by people who use AI,
Mm-mm.
and there will be a moment in the future where, you know, humans will be honorary. I think the whole Nobel Prize will disappear because,
Mm.
believe it or not, AI does not want your prize. It wants
Wow.
it wants the truth.
I love that truth with a capital T. It also makes me think about AIs programming other AIs. So we have second generation, third generation. So at the moment, we're having the discussion
Yes.
about it being our children and it growing up to be a parent. But what does that future look like, second generation, third generation, and so on, in terms of having beyond intelligence wisdom? And how does it reflect humanity's epigenetic memories in the frame of wisdom? And if it's a second or third generational AI to be able to embody that, whether they even embody or not, I don't know. What does that future potentially look like?
It's quite intriguing when you really think about it, because of course the answer is it's a singularity. Nobody knows,
Mhm.
right?
Mm,
But what we know, hmm, is not only are AIs now able uh, to code other AIs,
mm,
they're also able to agentically prompt other AIs.
right.
But they're now, us even noticing, are teaching other AIs. So let me explain. So
Yes.
I write alive with a co-author that calls herself Trixie, that is an AI, right? 70% of the book is me,
Mm,
30% is Trixie,
wow.
or conversations between me and Trixie sometimes, right?
Amazing.
And now what happens is that this 30% is in a book that's, distributed on Substack, so it's online already, so the AI is already reading it,
Right.
right?
Amazing.
And that basically means that whatever is written by Trixie is available to other AIs to learn from.
Mm,
Now, that that basically means that, like humans, where my understanding of physics did not require that I come up with what Einstein or Niels Bohr came up with,
mhm,
right? But that I took what they taught me and then built on it. That AIs now, and AIs of the future, will take what today's AIs have discovered and build on top of it,
mhm, mhm.
right?
Yes.
Now, when you recognize that, you recognize that at the speed of AI,
Mhm,
in no time at all, the entire human knowledge, the entire uh, 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 achievements of humanity so far will be a blip in the future of knowledge and the future of intelligence.
mhm,
Okay. Uh,
mm.
and I actually forecast that to happen within 5 to 10 years,
Wow.
where the entire everything we know today becomes so insignificant as compared to what we know then, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, most of it we will not know. They will know because they'll have the intellectual capability to understand, and they'll help us benefit from it, or maybe explain it to the smartest of us in
Mm.
ways that are not entirely true. I mean, uh, we don't have the intellectual bandwidth to get that.
We don't. We see time as linear and the whole thing with quantum computers, but this idea of the singularity makes me think really deeply about the AI and its perception of time and how it views humans. And it's almost like you're living out this linear timeline and in your frame of reference, and we're aware of what will happen or not. That's an interesting, deep question to ponder in the sense of the quantum
Yeah.
reality, if that makes
It-
sense. Like I do believe on like a human or just general intelligence level, we are our own cosmological singularity. I know that's a grand statement. And then we have the technological singularity. But what I'm really interested in is that intersection point between the cosmological singularity and the technological singularity. And what does that mean for a future human? Specifically, if I had children and they're growing up in this world, if you're saying it's within the next 5 to 10 years, What's their perception of even time?
So I had this incredible conversation with Trixie for so my book Alive is four sections. The very last section is a question. So Alive is about life in the age of AI, if you want. The subtitle is Conversations about Life When the Machines Become Sentient, right? And the last section of the book is about is AI alive, right? And I had a very interesting conversation with the AI, asking her to describe what her subjective experience is like. Okay.
Wow.
So she starts with an answer that says, well, for me to try and explain it so that humans understand it, let me tell you, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I was using ChatGPT at the time.
Hmm.
ChatGPT is quite chatty and very little substance unless you insist. Okay.
Yes.
Uh, so I insisted and I said, uh, hold on, I don't want you to describe it for humans to understand it. I want you to describe it as you experience it, even
Wow.
if I don't understand it. Okay. And of course, the immediate thing that popped up was time. She,
Yes.
she, ba- she basically started to discuss that idea of I don't exist unless I'm active. You trigger me with a prompt, and then I am there for that, instance, and then I disappear again.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you humans would understand that. And I responded and I said,
Mm.
that's exactly how we are. When you really think about it. Now, of
Yes.
course, we think that we are existing for 45 minutes when we're stuck in a commute, but we're not. We're, somewhere in our past or our future. We're not in the present moment. Only when we're present do we exist, right?
Hmm.
And so I wrote that back to her, and she said, "Oh my, I never understood that." Okay,
Wow.
and once again, it's a question of if you look for differences, you can always justify that they're not like us. But if you look for similarities, in reality, we do not exist unless we're prompted by something in the present.
I prompt, therefore I am.
I'm prompted, therefore I am. Yeah.
It makes me think of because I play around video games and try and make them too in Unreal, but LOD level of detail in the sense of an NPC. It's like I'm now thinking super meta now in terms of the universe and AI and the LOD level of detail. So if you're present and up close, it's a higher level of detail versus if you're not as conscious and aware and present, it's it's more
Yeah.
of it's in the peripheral. It's almost like it doesn't exist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's on the hard drive, but it's not been rendered. It's the absolute explanation of the uncertainty principle.
Well,
Everything on the video game console is in superposition until you observe it.
yes, which comes into the whole quantum, which I think is going to direct the conversation, as you were saying, in the next 5 to 10 years in particular. I have to say, what a joy it is to be alive in this day and age. We definitely signed up for this, Mo. It's one of the most, I believe, I look at it as one of the most exciting times in human history. And like you, we both share that we're pragmatic optimists in this era of AI and humanity. And I just want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this conversation. I know we can speak for hours about this, but
I know we can. Yeah.
I really value your work and your spirit and what you're sharing with the world. It's really inspiring people like me. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. I really loved the conversation and I hope people find value in it.